Welcome to Beyond the Margins, the podcast, the place where we engage, educate, empower, and elevate. I'm your lead learner and host, Dr. Sohn A. Each week, I sit down with some of the brightest minds and dynamic leaders in education to challenge traditional narratives, especially those shaping the experiences of students at the margins. Together, we explore new ways to reimagine schools, classrooms, and learning communities as spaces for growth and transformation. At Beyond the Margins, we center students too often overlooked, sharing the stories, strategies, and ideas that matter most. Voices long pushed aside are brought to the center. Welcome to Beyond the Margins. Did you know that students who experience culturally responsive curriculum show higher academic achievement, stronger motivation, and greater critical thinking skills? Yet, studies consistently show that the majority of instructional material is still centered on a narrow, dominant narrative. Research out of Stanford and the National Education Association confirms that when students are taught through inquiry-based, culturally grounded curriculum, they are more likely to engage deeply, persist through challenges, and see themselves as capable contributors to society. The gap isn't student ability. The gap is what and how we choose to teach. Today's conversation is one I've been waiting to have. Our guest, Ms. Carynne Conover, is not just an educator. She's a champion for students, a curriculum architect, and a leader who understands that education is fundamentally about human dignity, truth, and preparation for life. Help me welcome Ms. Carynne Conover to Beyond the Margins. Sister, thank you for being with us today on Beyond the Margins. You're one of those people when I decided to do this podcast, I knew I had to reach out to and get you on the show. Thank you for being with us. How are you?
I'm well, and yourself?
I'm doing excellent. I'm super excited about how we're going to jump in today. You don't know this, but you're one of the people who kind of molded me when I first came to DC. You are a warrior advocate for students in our community, and I saw that from day one. So we're going to get it in today.
Thank you.
Please tell the Beyond the Margin audience a little about your journey in our profession of education.
You know, it's easy to start as being the educator, but really it starts, as we know, in childhood, right? My mom encouraged me to read. My mother encouraged me to do anything I wanted to do. So if I wanted to make marionette puppets, if I wanted to crochet, if I wanted to do these things, she figured out a way to do this. This was a single mother who figured out a way. If that meant 3 jobs, that meant 3 jobs. But she also found that time to take me to museums. And I'd say, hey, Ma, this is going on. Or she would find something for us to do. She made sure that she kept me in private Catholic school my whole time from 1st through 12th grade. When I got to college, I knew I wanted to be in advertising. You couldn't tell me otherwise. I was going to write ads for Nike. I was going to just do it someplace else, right?
Yeah.
But as I got towards the end of my college career, and talking to my grandmother about cousins who did not make it like I did, I realized that the problem, as I defined it, was that public education was not the same as private. And it should be, because it is the taxpayers' money. So that's when I made that shift that I needed to go back to school after at the end of my college career and then become an educator. And so to me, it just felt natural. It made sense to me. I wanted kids who looked like me, kids who had socioeconomic backgrounds similar to mine, kids who just wanted to learn regardless of color. Because as you guys know, we had students of all complexions when we worked together. But if they really wanted something, I felt that they needed to have people who were there to show them how to do it. So that became my passion and my mission. And so I would tell people that I became a professional and a woman in the DMV area. That's where I spent the bulk of my career. So finished that segment of my career. And now I'm back home in Jersey. My birth certificate does say Newark, and that's where I am as the director of social studies education for the district. We have over 60 schools. So building programming has definitely been the work and the mission. I've been supported in doing that work. The community has been receptive. The superintendent has been most gracious. I've been able to work with some great people, and we're moving an agenda. I've been very clear that Newark will be the blueprint for how do we do quality social studies education. And we are making gains in what I set out to do.
Yeah, I'm sure that you were clear on your expectations to move the needle and to push change in students and student achievement. But how did your early experiences, you were exposed to an educational journey that was a little different. You went to Catholic school from K through 12, and then it's kind of like you did the reverse of, the miseducation of Negro. You went and got educated and then brought all of it back
For
to
all
the
of that
community.
back of
But it was
yep.
it was about exposure, right?
Yeah, it was definitely about exposure and definitely about equity. I knew that the difference between those who make it to the table where decisions are made and those who do not is about being prepared for that moment. And that means having a valuable, well-rounded, rich education of depth and breadth. And I knew that I was afforded that. I knew that I had an amazing educational journey. I always had teachers who were fond of me, even the ones who I frustrated the holy hell out of were fond of me. And I know why I frustrated them, because I was always asking questions. My mother told me to ask questions. She said, this is how you find out. And if they don't have the answer, you ask them to direct you to where you need to go, and then I will make sure that you get it. But teaching not just me to do that, but I embody that with my students. And, you guys remember, I would tell kids all the time, advocate for what you want, speak up, be heard, be respectful, but speak up, be heard. If you need something, tell somebody that you need it. If we as adults miss that you need it, you pull our cards and tell us that we missed something, because that's how it moves forward. So I knew from an early age that education meant something. Knowing stuff meant something. It meant you can contribute. It meant that you could be seen.
Mm.
And I know that when we deprive people of that, we're doing that to silence them. So they cannot be seen, they cannot be heard. And at a young age, I recognize that. And I am fortunate that I was able to be supported in that in every place, nearly every place that I ever was. Even at times when it was difficult for some people at first to kind of get on board with what it is that I was coming in with,
Yeah.
most people generally got there.
When you hear effective curriculum,
Mhm.
appropriate resources,
Uh-huh.
instructional materials,
Uh-huh.
what does it look like and what should it do for students?
First of all, I start with this kind of general education for everyone. So when we talk about social studies education, what we're talking about in K-12, that's primarily history education. And it's the other social studies that are layered into that, the social studies of political science, geography, civics, and so forth. History in K-12 is to tell fundamentally the story of the human experience. Different states require different parts of that to go more in depth than others. But generally, everyone has a conversation that starts in pre-times through the current day. What is important for us to remember is that the human condition cannot, by nature of it being the human condition, be just about one people. Just by the nature of the human.
Human. Human is inclusive, right?
But human,
Human is inclusive.
the name, it's there, right? So what is important for us, and this is something that we did when I came into Newark, is that I worked with teachers. You know me, I roll up my sleeves. I just don't talk. I'm like, no, I'm about it. This is what we got to do. We got to learn how to plan. Fine. We got to research. Fine. Whatever it is that you need, I will give it to you. And we rolled up our sleeves and we were very conscious in writing curriculum that was inquiry based, right? Because that's the craft of the historian. The historian asks questions. That's how you get to the meat of the things. That is how you build curriculum that allows everyone to be seen, by asking those questions. Those critical questions, those compelling questions. Compelling questions can take you all over and allow you to dig deep and broad into things. So, for example, when we talk about World War I, the question that grounds that unit is, why war?
Mm.
That compelling question.
There are other options. Why war?
But why war?
Yeah.
Right? Why war? That allows you to get into the other options. It allows you to get into the players who decided that war was going to be the course of action. It allows you to get into the people who have to now meet this course of action, even though they weren't at the table when this was decided, right? Because we know that war often happens in boardrooms, and then our young men and women are the ones who die on these
Go out
fields,
to fight it.
right, fighting this war that they never really wanted to be a part of. We understand that. So we look at those questions because those questions allow us to then explore that concept of why something happens, and we can then take that to why urban warfare, why crime, why the opiate crisis, why these things, and we're then allowed to look at all these primary sources to really get to the heart of the matter of, gosh, a lot of humans were in the mix of this, but everyone's story isn't being told in the mix of this, right?
And that's the true moment of education and learning.
Mhm.
It's not just the questions that the teacher asks, it's the
Absolutely.
questions that are prompted in the student's thinking because of the initial
Right.
question.
That's because curriculum is not just a document. Curriculum is a noun, a verb, and an adjective,
Mm,
right? The document is your noun,
okay.
right? The movement of teacher and student around that curriculum in that space is the adjective and the verb.
Mm, okay.
Right? That's where it lives. Curriculum is meant to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the US Constitution is meant to live, is meant to expand, is meant to change.
And so that actually gives every social studies teacher like the ultimate hack because it's always relevant. It's always relevant. There's not an opportunity where a student can say, well, how does this impact me? I don't care what it is.
Right. It doesn't matter because it's the idea of we're driving the conversation, we're driving the thought behind the questions and all the people and pieces that go into it. So it's really easy to do this work well, right? Because the craft of the historian obligates one to be a researcher. It obligates one to ask questions. It obligates one to be a scholar. It advocates. It obligates one to be, by default, a citizen of the world, right? That's what quality education looks like. And not just in social studies. That just happens to be my wheelhouse, right? But this happens in math. When you're doing math and you're talking about real events and you can put real things into that, right? It's easy to talk about, inflation in math and how that affects different segments of the population differently. It's easy to bridge the stories of urban Black students in Newark, New Jersey with students in parts of West Virginia where their parents no longer have jobs because industry is gone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We are very intentional in making sure that those connections are made because we know that outside of our classrooms, there are people who would want us not to make those connections. Because it's when those
Yeah.
connections are made, we realize what is really at stake.
Yeah. It becomes relevant.
It becomes relevant.
Not just theoretical, not just something for, data collection for the district. It means something to me. And once we hit that sweet spot of everyday practicality and relevance,
Mhm.
what does that do for students' motivation and persistence around engagement?
So I never had trouble with students coming to class because
Never.
never, never.
I wanna tell a story right here. One time I came to your room,
Okay.
I forgot for what. I knock on the door, you wave me in, everybody turns and sees me and goes right back to work. And so I'm thinking like, give me a moment, I'm just gonna slide in. You're like, nah, they good. They know exactly what the expectations are. Nobody broke rank. And it was just a classic example of high expectations and a
Mhm.
culture that the kids understood and knew what to expect. And they knew they were in a safe place. And so they did what you wanted them to do. And that was for me, there's something that stuck in my mind. I said, okay, this can be done.
This
This can
can't
be
be
done.
done.
Yeah.
It can be done. And when you create that safe space, when you create that place where they're intellectually engaged, I think part of what people forget is that every sentient being wants to be intellectually engaged. They want to be respected for knowing that they bring something into that classroom and it's not just me giving them something, right? Because that's where curriculum happens, that adjective and that verb, right? That kid is bringing something, I'm bringing something, and we're mulling over these historical facts, looking at the primary sources, engaging it, talking about it, making sure we know how to write a cohesive narrative of what it is that we've learned. When you respect that they come in with something, when you respect that they have something to offer, this is not as hard as some people would make it out to be. Now, that's not to say that we don't have those students that have so many issues outside of the classroom. But as the schoolhouse,
Yeah.
it's our responsibility to try to figure out as much as that as we possibly can. Right. I just recently told an administrator, I saw something in a class and I saw a kid and I was a bit concerned. And I talking to the administrator, and the administrator says, well, we've tried to work with the mom and blah, 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 blah. And I said, that's lovely. I don't care. When that kid crosses the threshold of this building, it's our problem. We figure out how many resources we can rally around and make sure we solve the problem. So I'm never going to be concerned with you telling me, but the mama, I'm going to always ask you to start with you. I did. I saw. I reached out to this resource. I did this. I did that. I don't want to hear about the mom, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the trope that we want to use to say that some kids can't achieve because it's home. It's this. I'm not saying home may be a
Yep.
crazy
Yep.
place.
Yep.
They may even be unhoused. They might have family members in the throes of addiction. They may have any number of those things we know happen. I simply don't care. I'm looking at you as the adult, you as a degree holder, you with the government job that gets the paycheck to figure out what we're going to do.
And it should be one of those things, it should be a trigger to energize our work, to inform how we push forward, because it matters most what we do in those 8 hours that we have the young person. They're already fighting uphill. We are the socially acceptable institution to bring them out of that. Education, public education, urban education, right? And so when we fall short, we do them a huge disservice.
Absolutely. Not only do we, and this is me getting into my historical narrative, not only do we do them a huge disservice, we do a huge disservice to those people who invested in us, right? This is how this works, people, right? People poured into us, we pour into the next, and they pour into the next. That's how this works. It is very clear. There is no other version of the human existence other than each one does for the next, right? And reminding adults of that all the time. Sometimes that doesn't mean we don't get discouraged. That doesn't mean that we don't get fed up. That doesn't mean we have that one student that we call on Jesus to help us deal with. Just that one student, right?
Yeah.
That one student where you like, okay, I'm getting ready to lose my good government job. There's one student. But when we calm ourselves down, when we get back into knowing exactly what our mission and our purpose is, our mission and our purpose is to make sure that we have done our job to ensure that that person joins the greater society, fully functioning, fully engaged, and ready to assume the work to do that for the next person.
Yeah. And can really, become their best self.
Best selves. Yes.
That's full education. That's when you have the freedom to be yourself, self-actualize, know your purpose, your direction. That's when you
Absolutely.
really get a real citizen.
Absolutely.
How do curriculum resources communicate expectations?
So this is interesting that you say this. Right now, we are looking at, we're in textbook adoption mode, meaning that, we've had sources for certain number of years, and now, we're eligible to look for perhaps something else. So one of the things that I have been very vocal about is when we look at textbooks, and I say this too also as someone who's involved in the mechanisms of how we think about history across the state and different organizations. We are so used to trying to find history textbooks or history curriculum that engages the historical narrative that is most comfortable, right?
Status quo.
The status quo. And in that, you then have the missed opportunity to truly engage everyone in understanding how interconnected we truly are versus how different we are. And how some things have been continuous conversations and not just these blips on the historical narrative. That some things have been complete and total through lines, and that you can call the next play because you understand how it was
Last one.
done before,
Yeah.
right? So, give you an example of something that's part of the standard quote, as it were. When we talk about U.S. history, and I'm always mindful of this as being classically trained Americanist and African Americanist, um, I tell people jokingly, there are Black people at the end of the Civil War. Then, if you're lucky, depending on which textbook, Black people don't show up again until the Harlem Renaissance. And then they're gone again until MLK. If I were a student who had that was
Yeah.
the only exposure I had, I'm asking, if I'm even asking that question, because I'm probably in an environment where I've not been engaged in asking
Allow,
questions,
yeah,
right?
free to ask
As
that
questions,
question.
right? I'm like, okay, so Black people had no problem in America between the end of the Civil War and the Renaissance. And then things went wrong somewhere because Martin Luther King came from somewhere. So there was these pockets where things probably were just fine. What happened? That's if I have enough information to kind of ask those questions. Then it could be that other kid who's like, wait a minute. This seems like this is only the stuff that you want me to know. Cause you yeah, just enough. Like, but why is that? Why can't I know these other pieces? If I was that kid, I'm like, what? This doesn't make any sense. But it makes you think that when companies write these books, we're still dealing with the narrative that is most comfortable, even if it gets a little bit more progressive, right? You get some places that kind of add a little bit more here. You might
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
see Stokely Carmichael somewhere, but it's still missing the mark, right? Because I'm still asking the same question of why don't I know what happened to Italian Americans that were lynched? That's important for us to know, right? Because that idea of lynching happening to other groups of people in the early 20th century is important for people to understand the violent nature of response to anybody who was different,
Who's other?
who was other, right?
Ultimate xenophobia.
Right. So, but that's an important story, right? Because that helps makes that connection across people that again, we're afraid to kind of have those
Right.
deeper conversations. So for us, even though things might be anchored on a textbook, we do such a great job. And this is to the teachers I work with, the teachers and
Mhm.
administrators who roll up their sleeves and write the curriculum, that we go beyond those things to make those connections, right? Because I'm very mindful of making sure that we are having the conversations about, I say this all the time, about the people's experience within the American experiment.
Right. And so in that regard, social studies is super interdisciplinary,
By
or at
nature,
least by
by
nature,
nature,
right?
by
And
nature.
so opens up all these opportunities for fully engaged educators to engage their students.
Absolutely. You cannot tell the story of the human existence without every other discipline. Right. And this is why, jokingly to my colleagues, I always say, even though most times if you go any place, the totem pole of important subjects is math, English, science, social studies, right? So we're the subject at the far end of the table. But I always make the joke, it's like, but I'm the most
Hold on, I gotta
important
push
one.
back. Is somebody further down the end of the table? That that's us CTE
They're the
people.
feature, you're right.
They leave us standing up with the broom at the door.
That's true. That is very true. That is absolutely true. So, right. So I'm closer to the talking to you at the door, at the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're at the table, but you barely hanging on.
barely hanging on, right? So I'm always telling people, I said, but all of you guys exist. And I said jokingly, for me, right? You just exist for me, right? For me to tell about the human condition, right? That's important. So our teachers do deal with economy. They do deal with science because you can't tell these stories without those
Isolation.
things.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, but we're very mindful that where there are gaps in the textbooks, we make sure they're not present in our curriculum. Does that mean our curriculum is perfect? Absolutely not. Just the nature of any document can't be perfect, but we built it so it can grow, it can expand. Like I said, like the Constitution is living. So when we see something that has to be engaged, we make sure that we shift and make sure that we include it. But that also allows us to think about these other types of courses that we can have, where we can do these deeper dives into things. We have a course called Crimes Against Humanity. Right.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, Crimes Against Humanity. And the teachers love kind of pulling things together to make it work, that they have already proposed a part two, kind of a second one. But the first one has a unit on genocide. We know about genocide. We start the genocide story as far back into the late 1800s. When we're talking about it, of course, we can include more. But when we move that needle back, we can not just kind of start with the Holocaust, we start with the ones before the Holocaust. And we pull that through line about this crime against humanity that keeps repeating itself, right? So we
stubborn. And
start
that's
with
the thing, keeps repeating.
it keeps
Yeah,
repeating itself. So we start and we have these conversations. We talk about the first genocide of the 20th century in Africa. We go to our meet, like we have those stories. We have another unit about enslavement in the Americas, but current enslavement that still happens in the world. And in the last unit, the teachers have kind of a touch onto several different things. The opioid crisis as being a crime against humanity, the
yeah,
purposeful movement of drugs into a system versus dealing with the problems that might make people turn to drugs, right? They talk about dowry laws. So it's that type of thinking that I love that my teachers are doing, and then they're engaging their kids and that type of work, because that is the real work. That's where kids are like, wow, let me think outside myself. Wow, I never thought about that way. When we ask kids to do research projects, some of the things that kids are coming back with are amazing. The things, but that's because we gave them the space to be in a place
freedom.
where you can
Yeah,
think, where you can ask questions, and then be supported in going to find answers to those questions.
yeah. And see, that's the innovation of instructional design. That's a new way to approach historical topics.
Hmm.
I write in the book about a social studies teacher I had, and what we did was we copied the board. It was a timeline. It was a very linear timeline, a very unilateral, monolithic. We didn't learn a lot. It was just a story, a version, a narrative. But what you're doing, this is unleashing education. This is how do we get it? How do we convey these important ideas to students in a way that is not just meaningful today, but can inform them about the world they see around them?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to say two things to something that you just said. One, I tell teachers and fellow administrators all the time right now that some of the things that I'm telling you now, I can't tell you that I did this in my early part of my career. I cannot tell you that. I can tell you that I probably did a lot of wrong things in the early part of my career, right? But as you grow, as you learn, as you watch other teachers in other disciplines, as you go to workshop, as you stay in classes, as you get more degrees and you're learning and you're reading, you're realizing those errors. So what I bring forth, I tell them all the time, I bring to you my successes and my failures. And
Hmm.
I'm trying to
Yeah,
save us time
yeah.
because we ain't got that
Don't
much
don't
time.
step there. Yeah, maybe step there.
That's
Yeah,
right. Trying to save us time, right? And then the other thing is important too, is that I tell my teachers all the time that the one thing that I never want to see is what I call pulpit teaching. I should
mm,
never feel that there's a Black Baptist minister at the front of the classroom ever,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that is not history teaching. That's not, this is supposed to be the facilitation of learning. And I'm always saying that it's the facilitation of learning. If you are not facilitating learning, then you got it wrong.
yeah. 100%. On the other side of that coin, what are some of the negative impacts to engagement, identity, student development when we have this ineffective approach to instruction or ineffective resources and curriculum? What happens to students? Are they negatively impacted?
Well, we can tell that right now, right? If we don't teach students how to absorb information, how to question, how to research and read, you are more likely to follow what you hear.
Hmm.
And we know that everything that you hear Not saying it can't be true with writing too, but we know for a fact that everything that you hear is done to drive a narrative,
Yeah.
to serve a purpose.
Hmm.
Very few times are our students exposed to those people like yourself and myself who are presenting their research, who are presenting, you know, all of the different views and presenting it to the students and say, now take from that what you will. Kind of you go with that. We know that that's not always what happens. So when we fail to engage curriculum the way that it is intended, which is to be that adjective and verb, we deprive students of the ability to move forward in life in a way where they could be completely discerning of information that comes to them.
Yeah.
And that then creates that domino effect of believing and following things that you're not fully informed of. But more importantly, education failed to teach you how to become informed.
Yeah. And that's going to be increasingly more important. And as we leave the information age and slide so calmly right into the AI age, where, analyzing, assessing, being able to discern and research and read for yourself with all of the millions of sound bites coming to you is going to be an important skill.
It is definitely going to
It's the
be
new
that.
literacy.
And in some ways we're in a race against time, right? To make sure that we're teaching those skills. So then they know how to understand the things that are coming at them, how to take what they will from what's coming at them. Part of what we're seeing now in this space where, and I think it's a very crucial space right now that we're in, right? Because like you said, slide into this AI. We're also in this space where blatant lies are not even checked
Yeah.
by people the way that we would want them to be checked, right? I know you and I have probably sat at family gatherings and you've heard family members, friends of the family that are there say things and you turn around like, right?
You get out your phone, you start texting under the table, like, what did I just
Now,
hear?
what did I just hear, right? And you realize the level of confidence that they had in saying it because they like, I didn't, it wasn't even like, I don't know what this is true or not, but let me tell you
Nah, it
what.
was
That's
100.
right.
Yeah. They was standing on business.
Right. There's no disclaimer. That's right. That is like,
Yeah.
you're like, wow. And these are people who are dear to us. So when you hear that, you realize how easy it is for us to replace intellectual engagement with these other noisy things, right? So it is crucial that we stay committed to that, right? One of the things that I do, and I say to my teachers all the time, and they tell me is I just about a broken record at this time, is that their job is to facilitate learning so that students can be the creators of knowledge. That's what this is all about, the creators
Yeah.
of knowledge. And you
Yeah.
can only do that when you know how to discern, how to analyze, how to evaluate, how to take in different things and kind of shift through what is and what isn't. That's how you become creators of knowledge. I don't want them to repeat anything that we told them. I want them to create understanding for themselves because that is what's going to serve them well in life, no matter what job they go to, whether
Yeah.
they go directly to college, whether they go to career, being able to create knowledge, meaning you can discern, you can analyze, you can evaluate. That's going to
Yeah.
be the crucial thing. And that's the thing that we have to really hold on to as educators, because that's our job. That's our
That's our
job.
job.
It is never about what people say, oh, and you hear it because just by default, people say it different ways, right? They think that we're trying to indoctrinate. No, no. Indoctrination is the tool of those who wish to oppress, right? We know that, right? Because we know
We're not
history.
trying to we're not trying to fill them. We're trying to unlock them.
Right. Like, yeah, I don't listen, I would not want anyone to be indoctrinated. Lord knows. I wouldn't want that. What I want, though, is to make sure that the person who sits across from me has their best interest and my best interest, because guess what? They're not different. You want a world that is safe.
Yep.
I want a world that is safe.
Yep.
I want a world where our children can create a good living and take care of their families, have cookouts, go to the park, go on vacations, right?
Free to be. Free to be.
Free to
I want you
be.
to be free to be. I want to be
I
free to
want to be
be.
free.
Yeah.
I want to be free to be. But people would have you believe that we're so incredibly far apart, right? And so that's what we got to keep holding on to. And don't get me wrong, it's hard. As you know, it is probably hardest for me being in social studies, right? Because it's the one topic that everyone can attack in public education. Read the books that you read, the
Yeah.
ones that are not
Yeah.
banned, and then
Right.
social studies. Like, what are we teaching students, right? And so for us, it is very important. And when I say for us, at this point, I'm really talking about me. It is important that we are ensuring that we're doing a good job of talking about the experiences within the experiment. And that's when we're talking about American history, which is generally where people kind of chime in on. A lot of people have a lot to say about American history. World history, not so much. Right? But even there,
Except for the
it
omissions
is the
that are
omissions.
often in world history.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's generally the people who actually care about history that talk about the mission. The people who want the history to look a certain way, well, those omissions are fine, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
Right. Right.
those omissions are fine.
Mission
A mission
accomplished. Yeah.
accomplished, right? So for us, it is constantly having that conversation about how do we do this work with integrity that is solid, that it cannot be attacked, because it is doing the good work of the craft of the historian. It's well written, it's engaging the task verbs, it's engaging skills, and is looking at history in a way that is not promoting or disparaging any one group of people. It is doing what, and I'm going to quote Dr. Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham out of Harvard, because truth matters.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
about what is the truth, right? This is not about, your position on the truth, because truth has no value. It's neither good or bad.
It is what it
It is
is.
what it is. Right.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean that we can't say that happened, yet this happened too. Both these stories are true and
Can be
can
true. Yeah.
coexist.
Yeah. And do.
And do.
Or this.
And
Yeah.
do, right? And trying
Hmm.
to get people to understand it. And when we understand that, it is so much easier to bring other people to the table, because it makes sense. I think what people really want is things that are just common sense. And when we pull all the other noise away, that's what it is. But other people will create noise. Because if you create noise, you get to control the narrative, and then people don't have to actually read and learn from themselves, because
Right.
noise
Is the
is the
narrative.
narrative, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm always looking for ways to pull out noise, for my teachers, for my administrators. How can I leave the space without noise so you can do the real work, which is engaging
Yeah.
curriculum and that adjective and that verb, because that's where students get to grow, where they get to live, where they get to see themselves, where they
Yeah.
get to push the narrative and push the envelope. We want our kids to come out, and this is very true. We want our kids to come out to be better than us. That
Yeah.
has never
That's the
changed.
goal.
That has been
Yeah.
day one for everybody.
Beyond the Margins, the podcast, will return in a moment.
Your Divine Journey, LLC, is here to walk with you through life's ups and downs. Whether you're seeking therapy, life coaching, support, or personal consultations, we provide a safe, empowering space to heal, grow, and step into your best self. Your journey is unique. Let's make it divine. Connect with us today and start moving forward with clarity, confidence, and peace. www.yourdivinejourneyllc.com.
At the Travel Bureau, we are dedicated to creating bespoke luxury experiences for the discerning traveler, specializing in detail-rich journeys designed with heart and intention. We turn your dream getaway into a beautiful, curated reality. Wherever you're going, the Travel Bureau will get you there in style, comfort, and joy.
If you're teaching urban, alternative, or non-traditional students and wondering why engagement feels harder than ever, the new book by Dr. Sohn A is for you.
Unlocking student engagement isn't theory. It's real strategies for real classrooms, built on trust, relevance, and relationships. And educators across the country are already responding. Unlocking Student Engagement debuted at #1 in cultural pedagogies, philosophy and social aspects of education, educational professional development, and educational certification and development. Grab your copy today wherever you buy books, and let's change how engagement shows up in our classrooms.
Welcome back to Beyond the Margins.
When we talk about, professional integrity, professional responsibility, and making sure that we stay the course, what advice would you give to a new teacher who may be struggling with a mandated curriculum and doing just the thing you're saying, making it relevant and bringing it home to students?
So one of the things that I've told teachers, and I say this all the time, is that by no means can I tell anyone that I'm a teacher that you can codify. I am not
Right.
codifiable. There are some teachers who can. He's like, oh, if you need to know about that type of practice, go see that teacher. This practice that Conover did, now I don't operate that way, right? So, but what I could do is that regardless of what administrator walked in there, I can prove to them with a detailed lesson plan exactly where I was going, how I was going to get there, and what was the assessment or product I wanted at the end.
Yeah.
If you want to be provocative, it is important to remember that you can only do that with a well thought out, executed plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of young teachers, and I never thought I would say anything about a young teacher because I was that one. That young teacher, like, now I'm saying that. But a lot of young teachers are energetic. They know what's at stake. They don't know always how to go about doing it or getting it.
Yeah.
And the way you do that is that you have to have an airtight plan from A to Z, well thought out and crafted. But guess what? If we knew history, you would know that that's the only way you really get to make those fundamental changes, is that you have a plan that is so airtight that you run it from A to Z with precision that it's untouchable. I tell teachers all the time, the bottom line is what you are doing in the classroom. Is it above reproach? And if it is, my hands are off.
You can tell in an instant by looking at a lesson plan
Yep.
what's about to go down.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You know, it doesn't take forever. You know they're gonna peter out in about 15 minutes, or if they're gonna have kids' attention, if this is gonna be a protracted conversation, if their projects, if like all of that's visible. And without a plan, I don't even know how you approach a class without a plan.
People do it all the time. They do it all the time. And
All the
and
time.
it's
All the
it's
time.
amazing because it's about, and I literally just had this conversation last week because I have this conversation all the time with people about what lesson plans are. Lesson plans are intellectual documents. For some reason, I don't know why people don't believe that. They're intellectual documents. What it is the opportunity for you as a teacher to sit down with your administrator and engage in this intellectual document. Right? So they can give you feedback and ask you questions and push it back and say, what sources are you using? How are students going to be able to access that source, right? Are you using universal design to make sure that everyone is engaged and can access
Everybody's
the
getting it.
information? And it's that conversation that you're having weeks before lesson plans get in front of students, right? I'm still stuck on the fact that people hand in lesson plans on Friday to use on Monday. And I'm like, whoa, when did your administrator have a chance to engage
Look at it and give you feedback.
and give you
Yeah.
feedback? And it's intellectual dialogue. It is plans that drive the lesson. It is plans where I can see plans to see where you'll lose the kids, like you said. I can see where this is going to go
Yeah.
wrong. I can see where you
Yeah.
don't really have a plan. You have an idea. I have a lot of young
Yeah.
teachers that have ideas.
Ideas.
Ideas are
Yeah.
great.
No strategy, idea. Yeah.
Ideas are great, right? But
Yeah.
how does this unfold? And it's not just now. I can look at 1 week of plan, but tell me exactly where you want to go. So if you want to go and do something absolutely unheard of, not seen before, I am with you 100%. But we're going
Show
to
me the plan.
engage in those
Yep.
plans and look at
Yeah.
every step of the way. You have to be ready to take the hard feedback. And it may not be exactly what you want to hear, But if you tell me you're ready to do the work, I am not going to let you do it alone. But you got to bring it to me so we can engage with your intellectual document in intellectual discourse about the intellectual development of our students.
So what I'm hearing is this lesson plan is the quintessential curriculum document.
Absolutely. 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 You know, some people who just look at it from one side, they say, you know, lesson plans are the legal document, right? And that's true. Like if someone comes in and says, hey, what did you teach this day?
Show me your
Absolutely.
plan.
It
Yeah.
is the legal document. But
Yeah.
I say it is the intellectual document. It is the place where I can hold a teacher accountable for the creation of knowledge. It is where I
Yeah.
can hold them accountable for reaching our students. It is my line of defense to ensure that those students are given the opportunity to grow, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm telling administrators all the time. That is, you are the last best hope to make sure that what happens there is exactly what our kids need, and then support the teachers in doing it.
And that's the level of advocacy I saw on first day when I got into DC from you. That is, and you know, and that's important. We all must do it. We can't just see our jobs or our position as content deliverers. That doesn't even scratch the surface. There's more to the responsibility of the work we do. What's the truth about curriculum and achievement that schools are reluctant to talk about?
The truth about curriculum and achievement, that, oh, well, this is the easy one, that they're connected.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
they're absolutely connected. Everything that we just said, that we just said, right? Curriculum, noun, adjective, verb,
Mhm.
right? How is that document living and breathing and working in that space? How was it designed? What did we put in to design it? Why were we designing it? For who were we designing it? All those things are important. It's not just saying, hey, I've got state standards, right? And so the standards say I have to cover these things. Absolutely. Yes, our state standards right now, I think it has MLK in it like 5 times, right? That's great. Yeah. But what I don't know is what made it MLK. I don't know that. Right? So when we write curriculum, we're looking at how do we help and respect kids the way that they think? We all beings think, right? Because part of what we do as human beings, we always ask, what happened before that? What?
And before
And what?
that, yeah. Keep pulling the thread. Keep pulling the thread. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we build our work, we build that work with that in mind because kids are naturally going to ask that. That's one of those primary questions that every living human being asks. Why? And then what happened before? Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when we build curriculum that way, it is easy then to see a difference and shift in student achievement because not only did we respect them being thinking people, right? We respected them in being part of their own learning because that's what curriculum is supposed to do. People find it like it's this huge hurdle to get over. No, when you respect the people in front of you, when you engage them in the process, they are more likely than not to be with you. And we know that. Even though when we worked together, we were at a magnet school, we both have had careers outside of magnet spaces where we've had kids who had some real tough upbringings, some tough circumstances, schools that were dilapidated. We had some serious issues. But at no point in time, and teachers do this across this nation every day, whether it's in poorly funded rural schools, poorly funded urban schools, the reality is, how do I create a space where not only is this child seen, they're allowed to intellectually grow? And if you think about this, and I have to go on this because in the work that you've done, part of the work you've done in helping students who are not in our traditional education settings, you've seen them change when you've engaged them as thinking beings.
It makes all of the
All of the
difference,
difference.
your approach. Yeah, your belief before you enter the door, regardless of where the door is.
Mhm.
It could be a magnet school up on a hill in Northeast, or it could be a maximum security prison. What do I believe about the people I'm about to interact with and engage with?
Absolutely.
If I believe you can learn, and I believe you can learn, then we can do anything together.
Absolutely anything together. And I give the caveat, you pray not like the way that I'm gonna get you there, but we're gonna get there.
We can get there. We can get there. And, methods change
There you go.
based on locale and place,
Yeah.
but we can always get up this hill.
Absolutely. It is when we remember what it is we're here to do and why it is important. I am very mindful that, and I said this earlier, I'm very mindful that I'm in debt to the past. I serve the present. I prepare the future. I know where I fall in the ancestors' work, right? And I think it's important that we all remember that, because that's what guides us in doing this work. Been in this work now 30 years, right? I'm certain of what it is that I'm doing. I am also certain that I've been blessed to be in a position to move more people into doing quality social studies education, thinking about education in a way that you are helping students to be creators of knowledge. I am mindful of all of that. And I'm also mindful of who I'm pouring into to go forth and do this work. Because it took us a lot to get to this place. The fact that you and I are on a screen having a conversation about education, being in positions to help students, I don't even think it could have been imagined.
Yeah. And we can't take it lightly.
Well, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Cannot take it lightly at all. I definitely am mindful of the times that if I'm in schools, and I've been in a school a couple of times within a kind of a week or 2 weeks, I have students who come up to me and they hug me like I'm the next person that's supposed to be in their building. It was like, you weren't here yesterday. It's like, there's over 60 buildings in this.
I got to go to
I
all
can't,
of them. Yeah.
right? So, but that reminds me how much we matter.
Yeah.
How much they connect, and how necessary it is for us to always be ready to step into however we need to step in to do this work, because it's about them and how we can support them.
Sister, this has been great. I'm sure we could go on. We do this for 2 hours sometimes at a time. You're a Beyond the Margins family. We'll certainly have you back so we can continue talking about this work that both you and I take so seriously.
Absolutely.
And thank you again. Thank you for what you've done for me in my career as being, a model of how the work should be done. I know that Newark and the students of Newark are benefiting every day from your expertise, your wisdom, and your advocacy. Keep fighting, sister.
I will. Take care.
As Carynne reminds us, curriculum is never neutral. It either invites students into the human story or quietly pushes them to the margins. She reminds us that curriculum is not just a document, it's living work. And when done right, it teaches students not what to think, but how to think, question, and lead. When we treat curriculum as a living, breathing practice, one rooted in inquiry, culture, and truth, we don't just improve engagement. We build agency, we build discernment, we build citizens who can navigate complexity, challenge narratives, and create knowledge for themselves. I wonder, if we truly believed every student was capable of deep thinking, truth-seeking, and contribution, how differently will we design our curriculum and instruction? And more importantly, how many futures might be unlocked by us doing so?
Next time on Beyond the Margins.
And so you took kids other places, California, New York, Paris. So you amped it up.
I amped it up. And so Denmark was just phenomenal. So just seeing the kids light up, seeing how other countries live. The funny part with each of the Italian trips, they had to say, did we offend the kids? Because our American kids are used to like, let me go eat and I want to be alone. And in the Italian culture, dinner like is an event. Like you are there like hours, and it's a whole thing. The food, of course, is amazing. And so we had to teach our kids to just sit and relax. Just enjoy the culture, enjoy just the being there.
Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Margins. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, share this episode, rate and review the show, and let's keep the dialogue going. If you would like to connect, email me at Sohn@beyondthemarginsllc.com. That's SOHN@beyondthemarginsllc.com. It's been a pleasure being with you. Until next time, keep teaching, keep learning, keep leading, and keep pushing beyond the margins.